Let's pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the opportunity of gathering here together. We come with thankful hearts, dear Lord. First of all, we come with thankful hearts for the meal that we've had before us, what's been prepared. We just thank you for the nourishment which you've given us, and we pray it would be nourishment to help us go forth and to do what you want us to do within our communities, within the things and the places that we have to go. We thank you, dear Lord, also come with you with grateful hearts for the greatest nation on the world that we live in. We do have a great nation, dear Lord, but there are troubled times, and we just come before you and ask for your guidance, ask for your direction, ask for your intervention, because we know things can get a whole lot better, dear Lord, and we just put those in your hands. And we bring our co-op before you, and we come with grateful hearts in that too, because in the last 16 months, we have gone through 3 major storms, and our linemen, our crews, our managers, they have all worked hard to get our electricity and our lights back on. And we thank you for them, dear Lord. We have one of the greatest co-ops in the country here. And we thank you and praise you for that. We pray that you would be with us tonight as we go into this meeting, that your direction would be here, guide and direct our processes, our thoughts, our votes, dear Lord. We just praise you for all that you do for us, and may we give you praise for all things. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Roger. Please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag is right over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. The minutes of the 2023 meeting were distributed in your handout bag. Motions required. Are there any objections or corrections to these minutes? If not, may we have a motion to approve the minutes as written? Okay, we have a motion over here. Do we have a second? We have a second over there. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passed. At this time in the program, I'll give board report. Good evening, fellow members of our cooperative. Thank you for attending our annual meeting of members. My name is Jim Wiekert. I am your board president. We hope you enjoyed a good meal this evening and especially good fellowship with cooperative neighbors, friends, and family. We also welcome members who are not able to attend in person but are watching online. At 53 years of age, I was not fortunate to see rural Ohio electrified, but I was blessed to have parents who lived through those times and shared details with me about the times before and after we had power. In particular, my mother lived in the Landic area outside of Delphus with her farm family and spoke about the great benefits electricity brought to their world. When I was a young person, every year my folks would attend the annual meeting, and my siblings and I would attend with them. I never tired of learning about the technical side of the infrastructure, but also the history and the democratic side of this big endeavor, and how it in so many ways changed their and our world. It may sound sentimental, but I will always remember my mom's stories and details of when the lights came on. In 2023, we had a modest increase in kilowatt-hour sales compared to recent history. This can be contrasted with the rest of the state's electric cooperatives, most of whom are seeing noticeable decreases in total sales. Much of our growth is coming from small commercial members. Commercial sales growth is good for all members as it helps diversify our load and helps spread our fixed cost. Lastly, it's good for local economic development. In late 2023, we had our first distribution rate increase in 13 years. While individual members are impacted differently depending upon the rate you're on and your level of electric use, overall it was a 9% increase on average. This will enable us to continue to invest in power reliability as we move forward. Being a rural utility, it simply costs an electric cooperative more to provide electricity than the city-owned and the larger utilities. Still, our electric rates are among the lowest for Ohio's 24 electric cooperatives and lower than AEP and AES. Something that helps our electric rates is your participation in our peak load management programs. By allowing us to temporarily control power to your water heater or air conditioner during the extreme peak high-use periods, you help the cooperative save more than $600,000 per year in our wholesale power bill from Buckeye Power. That's huge. We are financially sound with an equity level of 48%, which is standard for our industry. Having an equity at our board policy range helps us to minimize our cost of capital while still having flexibility to invest in our electric system and return patronage cash back to you. Our focus on power reliability is as strong as ever. We invest an average of $3 million each year in our local electric system to keep your lights on. Other highlights from 2023 include we now have 11,128 consumer members. Our total utility plant assets grew to $71.5 million, a $2.7 million increase from 2022. Much of the increase in utility plant in recent years is due to our investments in SCADA and distribution automation, which is substantially improving our reliability by minimizing outages. Last year, we paid back to our members $2 million in patronage cash back. Since 1955, Midwest Electric has returned more than $43 million in patronage cash back to our members. We now have 1,543 miles of distribution lines to maintain. Right-of-way clearing is performed annually to help reduce tree-related outages. Tree trimming took place along 165 miles of lines in the Blue Lake, Rockport, and Noble substation areas. We tested and treated 4,195 poles in the Cridersville and Moulton areas. Poles that are rejected will be replaced with new poles. Our local electric system and our employees have been tested over the past year. We've had 3 tornadoes do extensive damage in the last year: April 2023, March of 2024, and May of 2024. Each event caused outages lasting just over 24 hours for some members. Combined, we had 121 broken poles. It typically takes 2 to 4 hours to replace a single broken pole. Our system has stood up well to these tests, and our employees have demonstrated their commitment to you and their commitment to safety, as we've had no serious injuries in what can be a very hazardous business. We continue to expand our distribution automation equipment. We're nearly complete with this throughout our service area, and it has already provided payback in terms of reducing the length of power outages. Personally, as an engineer, that's an awesome thing to be able to keep the lights on longer, and it's a great investment that we've made for the members. We recently created a $12 million 4-year engineering work plan. This includes improving our backfeeding capabilities among substations to help with power reliability. Thank you to those of you who are involved in our grassroots legislative efforts and co-op owners for political action. We are facing very serious threats to whether or not electricity will be available when you need it the most. We must keep a strong voice in Washington and make sure that Midwest Electric can continue to provide our members reliable electricity. We have a booth called Member Promotions in the cafeteria today, where you can sign up for co-op owners for political action for just $25 per year, and we'll even give you some energy-efficient LED light bulbs as an incentive and a thank you. So please consider that. That's very important. As a younger director moving up into a leadership role through the years, I've been very impressed with the solid, dedicated employees at every level of our cooperative. When you see them, make sure you thank them for what they do and for all of our members. Your board here is made up of members like you that strive to make the best decisions and plan the best course for this enterprise as we move forward. A thank you to our board members here for their efforts and for putting up with me as their president. I would also like to thank and recognize fellow director Bob Barnt. Bob, would you please stand and join me? Yeah. Bob decided this would be his final term as a director, so he chose not to run again this spring, which makes this his last annual meeting as a director. Bob has served the Cooperative admirably the past 16 years. I'd like to present a plaque this plaque as a gesture of our appreciation. It says, "In recognition of your commitment and dedication to the members, employees, and fellow directors of Midwest Electric, thank you for your work and efforts to exemplify the spirit of cooperation." Thanks again, Bob, for the 16 years of service to the board and the members. At this time, please join me also in welcoming our next speaker, Kevin Zimanek, Assistant Vice President of our power supplier, Buckeye Power.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening, everybody. I'm Kevin Zimanek, the Vice President of Operations at Ohio's Electric Cooperatives. We are the provider of electric generation and transmission services to all the electric cooperatives in Ohio. And in total, the 25 co-ops that we serve provide electricity to homes and businesses to about 1 million people throughout the state. We are grateful for the opportunity to provide service to your electric cooperative and appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Today is an opportunity for you to hear firsthand from your cooperative leadership and get a better understanding of the issues we face that impact our ability to provide the safe, reliable, and affordable electric service that you guys depend on. So there's a number of challenges. There's two big ones that I'm going to talk about. The first is the impact of inflation on nearly every aspect of our business and industry, and its impact on the electric bill. Second, an aggressive federal regulatory agenda that is both affecting reliability of the national electric grid and the cost of producing and distributing electricity from our power plants to you guys. So that's true. I'm sorry. We have also seen the effects of dramatic inflation over the past couple of years on nearly everything we buy, and that's true for the electric cooperative here as well. The cost of materials to build, maintain the local electric systems, buy equipment, and the costs of higher wages for workforce are contributing to increases in the electric bill. Your electric cooperative, as you've heard, are aggressively trying to manage these costs, making decisions about projects and whether or not to make investments now to maintain the healthy and reliable electric system and weighing that against the future cost as well. Your board and management are carefully considering how to best meet both your immediate needs and your future needs. Our second challenge is a little more concerning. It is the aggressive federal regulatory agenda that we are facing, primarily driven by the US EPA's unrealistic goal to decarbonize the entire economy by 2035. This is affecting the ability of all utilities, not just cooperatives, through the nation to produce an adequate amount and reliable supply of electricity to meet the ever-increasing electricity needs. The US EPA has proposed several measures over the past couple of years that are both driving up the cost of producing electricity and causing several power plants throughout the country to have to shut down to avoid costly investments that would provide little to any environmental benefits. The premature closing of power plants without a reliable way to replace that energy has weakened the electric power system and increased our risk of widespread power outages, especially during extreme weather events. We alone are not alone in these concerns. The National American Electric Reliability Corporation, that's a mouthful, or NERC, is the entity entrusted by both the U.S. and Canadian government to monitor and assess the reliability of the nation's power system, and they have the exact same concerns. So do most of the regional grid operators in the U.S. PJM Interconnection, the grid operator for Ohio and the 12 surrounding states, have even stated that government policies are the greatest threat to their electric system reliability. We have already seen the costly and dangerous impacts of these policies in Texas during Winter Storm Uri in 2021, in California on a fairly regular basis, and in several nearby states during the Christmas of 2022 during Winter Storm Elliott. Over the last year, Ohio's electric cooperatives have joined other industry experts on Capitol Hill to express these concerns with the EPA rules and the impact they'll have on the electric system, and also on the people like you that depend on affordable, reliable, and safe supply of electricity. While we are making progress, there are still multiple misguided regulations. It is essential that our elected representatives in Washington get our priorities straight, that we need reliable, affordable, and as clean as possible energy, and in that order. Your electric cooperative has strongly supported these efforts to improve the policies and regulations that govern our operations. The leaders of the cooperative are looking ahead and making needed investments and improvements to be sure we are able to do our part to maintain a safe and reliable system in our local communities. We remain committed to you, our members, and to our local communities. We hope you will continue to support our efforts to balance both the demands we face and help with the priorities. One thing has remained constant over the years for Ohio's electric cooperatives, and that is when we face challenges, we are always more successful when we work together and support our common goals. Thank you again for your support and participation in your electric cooperative. I'm sure I'll be around afterwards if there's any Q&A about your power supply or you have any general questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin, for the power supply update. Is Eric up there? There he is. I'm going to turn my screens on. I'm sure our members will have a lot of questions about power supply when we get to the Q&A session, so it's nice to have Kevin here. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you again for attending and for being an active participant in your electric cooperative. Now, today, I'm going to talk mostly about what Kevin spent a little bit of time talking about, the government power plant regulations and how we have to respond, the consequences of some of these regulations. This is a difficult thing to do. I don't look forward to this. I don't enjoy this. But I also feel like I would be skirting my responsibility if we didn't inform you as far as what's going on. This isn't meant to be overly dramatic or anything, but it will probably come across that way. But I'm just simply presenting, this is the situation we're in, and this is what we're having to do now to respond to this situation. So try to bear with me and be kind to me, maybe. So the rolling blackouts, we're going to talk about that. The rolling blackouts that are projected will affect customers of every utility, not just Midwest Electric. So therefore, it helps if we start with maybe a high-level overview of America's electric grid. The U.S. has three major independent electric grids. A larger grid helps ensure power flow, redundancy, and plenty of transmission and generation supply. And Ohio is part of the Eastern Interconnection. And within the three major grids are 10 smaller regional grids. Ohio is within the regional grid called PJM. PJM is a 13-state grid. The purpose of PJM is to balance supply and demand. PJM manages the flow of electricity among the 13 states. PJM also serves as a marketplace among the utilities. Utilities are constantly buying and selling power supply and transmission services among one another, and PJM helps to set the rules and the pricing structure for those utility-to-utility transactions. And then zooming in even closer, here's a look at Ohio's 25 electric cooperatives and our rural service areas. We are Midwest Electric and the 25 co-ops in Ohio. We are a distribution cooperative, which means from the local substation to your home. For transmission, we lease that service from companies like AES and AEP. And then for power generation, we own Buckeye Power Supply Cooperative, and we own our own power generating plants. And here's a summary of the power supply plants that we own through Buckeye Power Supply. As you can see, we're primarily coal power because it is affordable and reliable, and the existing environmental regulations that are already on the books are already very stringent, and we've invested more than $1 billion, with a B, $1 billion in environmental upgrades at our Cardinal coal plant to make it among the cleanest in the world. And just as an aside, power generation and transmission accounts for about 2/3 of our costs. So about 65 cents of every dollar that you send us goes to power supply and transmission, and 35 cents for local distribution costs. So continuing our education on the electric grid and where the future problems are likely to occur. Let's take a look at the flow of electricity on this chart here. In step 1, electricity is generated at a power plant, which could be coal, nuclear, natural gas, hydro, solar. Cardinal coal power plant, our Cardinal coal power plant, for example, on the Ohio River near Steubenville, it's generated at 26,000 volts. Then a transformer outside the power plant steps it up to 345,000 volts so it can be transmitted long distances. At step 2, the power goes on the large steel tower transmission lines, and as it gets closer to load centers, a transmission substation will reduce the voltage to say maybe 69,000 volts, and then it continues on smaller transmission lines. And then at step 3, your local distribution cooperative like Midwest Electric has a substation, and there we have a transformer to step down the transmission voltage from 69,000 volts to 7,000 to 12,000 volts for local distribution. And then our power lines in step 4 carry it to your home or business, where another transformer reduces it further to 120, 240 volts or higher for larger users. So the problem we're talking about is America's fleet of coal power plants have been closing rapidly, and most of what's left will likely close in the near future, or at least it's going in that direction. In 2009, Ohio had 21 coal power plants. Today, only 4 remain. And this is happening mostly because of costly environmental regulations. As the regulations increase, utilities have to make a business decision, and in a number of cases, they're just closing down the power plant rather than invest money into something that is continuously being attacked by government regulations. And most of this lost coal capacity has been replaced by natural gas power plants. But natural gas also emits carbon dioxide, and that's the target. The environmental groups have declared that anything carbon is bad. So natural gas power plants are now also under attack by the environmental groups. So the latest rule, that's what everything's boiling down to here today. The latest rule from the EPA says coal and gas generated electricity must capture carbon emissions. Okay, so that's what this kind of boils down to. Coal and gas generated electricity must capture carbon emissions and then store the carbon emissions underground, which sounds great, maybe looks nice on paper. The problem is it doesn't work. Carbon capture and storage is an unproven technology. There are a couple of very small test projects for carbon capture and storage, but nothing has been done on a large scale. So they're mandating a technology that doesn't even exist. And the underground storage part would be very limited geographically as to where that could even be done. And how long before they start going after that, the underground storage, the drilling and the underground storage of CO2, and do we even know what effect that would have on geologic matters? And even if it works, the added cost of doing all this would add billions of dollars paid by you. Carbon capture and storage is also very energy inefficient, as the process of capturing and storing the carbon requires a lot of additional electricity. So much of the power plant's output would be consumed by that process before it even gets onto the grid. So the end result is that a lot of power companies just won't even try. They'll just shut down the power plant. So Buckeye Power, along with dozens of utilities and states, have filed lawsuits to stop this. And something similar was around, 2012 or so, or maybe even a little before that. There was another EPA proposal at that time, which wasn't the same, but it would have had a similar effect. And we did fight that one also in the courts. We ended up winning, but it takes so many years for that to get through the courts, so that the damage is already done. It sends a signal to the utilities that, get out of this business. So who would build a new power plant in that kind of an environment? Who would invest in their existing power plant? So even though we feel confident that this will get overturned, that the EPA is exceeding its constitutional authority, it's still going to have a negative effect. So the consequences of all this, of shutting down the reliable power plants, the base load power plants, the stuff that works all the time, what are the consequences of that? Kevin referenced NERC, N-E-R-C. It's the North American Electric Reliability Corporation. That's a not-for-profit organization that's focused on the security and reliability of the electric grid. NERC is now annually reviewing blackout warnings for different regions. And in recent years, as Kevin alluded to, California's had them, Texas has had them, even some areas in PJM, which we had previously thought were pretty safe. Even though PJM is supposedly a little bit safer than the rest of the country, it can still get caught off guard, and it has just recently in the last year or so. So it's basic science. The demand for electricity is increasing, and the supply of reliable baseload power is decreasing. All utilities are in this situation, not just electric cooperatives. We just happen to be the group that's sounding the alarm the loudest, talking about it here in public. A lot of the stuff in social media and in our magazine, we've been talking about this. For whatever reason, maybe the other utilities just haven't been as vocal about it as we have. But since we're not-for-profit and customer-owned, this is our reason for being. So let's go through an overview of what could happen, of what we're this is what we're preparing for now. And typically these events, blackout, brownout events, would happen during extreme cold or hot weather when demand is at its highest. Now at this point I want to call a distinction between these blackouts and our load management or load control program that we've been doing for decades. The load management program for your water heater or air conditioner, that's simply about cost savings. Electricity costs more during those peak periods, those high use periods. And load management has helped us save a considerable amount of money by helping us control your water heater and air conditioner and take it off the peak. And we'll continue to do that program for the foreseeable future. But whereas load management is more about just cost control and not an emergency, what we're talking about here is actually an emergency to keep the grid from collapsing. So when such a demand and supply imbalance is predicted a couple days out, PJM will start to take steps to try to keep the grid in balance. The supply of electricity must always match the demand for electricity in order to maintain 60 hertz frequency. If supply cannot match demand, then steps must be taken to reduce demand to match supply. And if that doesn't happen, then large portions of the grid would stop working. So hopefully there will be a couple days notice when weather conditions are going in that direction. For example, there could be a deep freeze, cold snap predicted a couple days out, and PJM's forecast might say, hey, there's a possible mismatch here between supply and demand. If so, PJM would notify us that energy conservation is needed. We would then start asking our customers to conserve energy or voluntarily reduce your use as much as possible. And this alone could help maintain the grid's balance and avoid larger problems. So please pay attention for these and do what you can. We're going to send out text, emails, use social media for these energy conservation calls. And this is an example of a graphic that Ohio's Electric Cooperatives has put together. And it's to send that message when these events are predicted. If the energy conservation isn't enough to balance supply and demand, then we or the transmission companies may be required to start shutting down either transmission substations or distribution substations. Again, this is, I don't like talking about this. I wish I didn't have to, but this is something, we actually have a plan for this. We actually have a plan for shutting down substations, and other utilities do as well. And so I feel it behooves me to tell you about this. It's a pretty big deal. This is called load shed. We don't know how much advance notice we'll have, but we will try to notify you as soon as we know. And again, we'll use texting, email, and social media. Load shed is the temporary shutoff of power to decrease power demand when conservation efforts do not restore balance. Load shed prevents more damaging grid collapse. Some areas within the co-op service region may have power while others do not. So it's like rolling outages is what we call it. The rolling outage is intended to be temporary, maybe 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 2 hours, and it's intended to rotate among the regions. So we might have one substation off for an hour, turn it back on, another substation off for an hour. That's what we call roll. It's rolling from one area to another. And the length of, and the location of that would all be determined by the event. We wouldn't know until the time comes. So when these events happen, we'll do everything we can to communicate with you and give you as much advance notice as possible. We'll also do everything we can to limit the duration of the rolling outages. But please understand that much of this will be beyond our control. So therefore, it would be wise to at least be aware that this is possible down the road. Don't know if it's going to be this year, next year, 5 years from now, but at least be aware that this is a distinct possibility now. And so it would be wise to begin preparing for this. And you can see on this slide a list of some things to consider. Our website also has a similar list of things to consider. Things like a backup generator, a go kit with safety essentials, backup power source if you have a medical device, or a backup location such as friends or family. So, good news. All right, almost done. Sorry, thank you for bearing with me this long. But these final two slides here is information you probably don't hear a whole lot of in this anti-carbon hysteria that's going on. This is information that you're probably not exposed to very often, but it does dispel a lot of the anti-carbon hysteria that's out there. So on this chart here, the red line is carbon emissions from electric utilities in the United States over the years. And you can see it's on a noticeable downward trend. The blue line is carbon emissions from cars, trucks, planes, the transportation industry. And the black line is carbon emissions from all other industries. Today, carbon emissions from electric utilities is the lowest emitting sector of our economy. And then finally, this slide, since carbon dioxide, CO2 is supposedly the enemy, let's take a look at global CO2 emissions. And this chart indicates to me that possibly this isn't just about the environment. So take a moment to look at this chart closely. It's a little busy, but take a minute and read it along with me here. It's from David Gaddy, a professor at the University of Georgia. It's a chart of global CO2 emissions from coal. Okay, of all the CO2 emissions in the world that comes from coal. As you can see in the blue box near the top, coal accounts for 40% of all the world's CO2 emissions, okay? And then you can see in red, coal power plants in China account for half of that. Looked at another way, coal power plants in China account for 21% of global CO2 emissions. Coal power plants in Europe, India, and elsewhere account for 16% of global CO2 emissions. And coal power plants in the United States account for a measly 2% of global CO2 emissions. But we're going to shut them all down. So we're going to shut down all our coal plants for that measly 2% of global CO2 emissions. The cost is going to be enormous economically and socially. It will be significant. I believe the social benefits of carbon far outweigh the social costs of carbon. So with that, good news. It's not over. We're still going to fight it, and we would like for your help. Jim mentioned our political action efforts. it can be effective. So we need your help. I just heard today there's a congressman in Ohio, I think maybe it was Balderson, I forget who, but there's a resolution that Congress is forwarding that's going to try to, I won't say maybe not strip, but tame the EPA with this particular issue, because they're clearly exceeding what their intent is, what their congressional mandate is. So there are efforts legislatively to fight back against this. There's efforts in the court system as well. But we do need your help in that. Our member grassroots program is very helpful with that. All right, so at this time, we want to open the floor for questions. We've got a couple microphones going around. And I just want to emphasize that if you could keep it to questions only, we don't want to do stories or statements, questions only. And after you ask the question, hand it back to Kevin or Paul or whoever's hand it back to Kevin or Paul, and out of courtesy for everybody else here. Along those lines, I want to make a note that a lot of electric co-ops these days aren't even holding their annual meeting in person. They've gone online. We have an online portion, but we also believe it's important to do it in person to have this face-to-face interaction and the chance for interaction from our members. And then those who do it in person, a lot of them don't do a wide open Q&A like we do. It might be like you have to submit your question ahead of time. So I just want you to respect that out of courtesy. After you ask your question, hand the mic back to Kevin or Paul. So, and Kevin Zemanek from Buckeye Power is here to help answer any of the power supply questions as well. So. Got a question up front here.
I'm not.
So with the rolling blackouts, so who has the initial say as to how that happens? You say a notice of a day or two in advance. Is that PJM? Where is PJM located? And do they have a preference politically about, hey, we're going to feed the eastern part of the PJM region versus the western part? Will that have a play in it?
Okay, so a few questions there. Try to remember them. Yes, PJM will be making that call.
Yep. Good question. So yes, PJM as the grid operator, they are responsible for determining when that happens. They are also responsible for where that happens. So they have, in their control rooms, they can see all the transmission lines over the 13 states. They can see where there's generation and where all the demand is. And their efforts will be to minimize where the rolling outages are. If it gets to an extreme situation like we're talking about and it's 10 degrees below zero, their number one option is going to be to tell all the entities in PJM to reduce their load by X%. So ahead of the time, they'll be looking at weather forecasts, their energy projections, and seeing what generation is online and available, and if they can or cannot meet that. And that's where we would get the notice ahead of time and provide that to Midwest and all the other co-ops in the state. I think those two. PJM is physically located in just outside Philadelphia. They have 3 control centers.
Stay up here.
The other question was, can they be manipulated by population? Let's say Washington, D.C. is in that PJM.
Yeah.
PJM. So are they going to say, okay, we're going to minimize this, but we're not going to affect D.C., we're going to affect everybody at the end of the day?
Yeah, so good question. So politics, fortunately, cannot impact physics. They will only be able, it would do no good for us to shut down load if they're having a problem in DC. The electrons can only flow where they can flow, and nothing can manipulate where they're going to be shedding load. Good question.
Thanks. Yeah, good. Oh, we've got Kevin's got one up top.
I can go loud enough. You mentioned political ramification. There's an important election coming up in November. Can you be blunt, plain, who's for us and who's against
Well, I appreciate the question. And I do want to be cognizant of the fact that not everybody is on the same political spectrum. And we do try to keep parties out of it when it comes to our political action. We don't look at party, we don't look at people, we look at policy. So, whichever side of the aisle doesn't matter to us. It's what is the policy and what is the impact on our members. So yeah, I'm getting there. So I was trying to walk the line a little bit. So yeah. So just factually, the current administration. So the organizations like the EPA, those are under the executive branch. So it's controlled by whoever's in the White House. And so the current administration's EPA is what's doing this. The prior administration's EPA rescinded plans like this, or did not. I don't know if that's the proper. Yeah. So does that answer the question in a nice way? Okay.
Matt, is this working? Yeah.
So the Cardinal plant is coal-powered. What's the future for the Cardinal plant? Will it be gone to natural gas or what?
Our goal is to make Cardinal plant the last coal plant in the United States. So we have no plans to change the fuel or anything there. So it provides reliable service, and that's important to us.
I just was wondering if you're pro people putting up their individual solar panels and it would feed yours if they don't use it. Is that something you would like to see or not like to see?
It's not something we would not like to see. So I guess I'd say we're more in the pro category. But we're definitely not against it. We have a rate so we buy back the excess output from it. And we provide advice to help people. I think if you are looking at, and there's a booth out here today from a local solar dealer. So none of this, everything I talked about shouldn't be construed as, any local person who's got some solar on their rooftop. That shouldn't be confused with what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is more of the massive industrial size solar and wind operations, eliminating coal. But yeah, as far as individuals putting up solar, we've got programs to buy back the excess from that. But we would highly recommend that you call us first for advice. There are some companies that have been very shady out there, and different attorney generals have gone after some shady companies. And also you want to make sure that your home is as energy efficient as possible first, before you put the solar panels on. If you get a bigger bang for your buck with energy efficiency, plus it could reduce the size of the panels that you would need in the end.
I don't have a mic, but I'll just stand and see if you can hear me. Along those same lines, many people are aware that Amherst Greenhouse out there, out by Alger, there's a huge amount of solar panels being installed right now. What kind of information might you have in that regard? I'm totally unaware of what's going on over there.
It's probably mid-Ohio. Is that mid-Ohio?
Questions like, what's that all about? We're out in a rural area. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not. Alger, you said?
Well, it's off of 235 right down Amherst Road.
Herod? It's probably mid-Ohio. Yeah, it's not in our area. It's a little bit outside of Midwest Electric. I know Mid-Ohio Energy, I think is in that area. But we don't directly typically deal with those large solar farms. If they get to a certain size, then Buckeye Power would get involved in buying the output from those. Yep.
Currently, a mandated amount of electricity has to come from renewables.
You want to answer? Sure.
So Yes, it's usually at the state level. And so the state of Ohio had put one in years ago. And as leaders change, they put a freeze on that. But cooperatives are not subject to, it's called a renewable portfolio standard. However, I will say we still do have renewables, and our largest source is from Niagara Falls. And it's a very good, consistent flow of electricity. So it's not subject to wind, it's not subject to sun. We can get and request a specific amount of energy out of that resource at any time. And so we get about 5 to 6% of our total energy from Niagara Falls at Buckeye Power and for the state.
Great, good questions. We got one over here.
Question about the lawsuit against the EPA. Do you have any idea how soon that's going to go forth? Is it going to be 6 months, a year, 5 years, or maybe never?
Probably closer to 5 years, based on past.
Yeah, so the last time this happened, it took about, so we're doing multiple steps. The first one is called requesting a stay, and that essentially puts a hold or a pause button on the rule that was just put in place. And the last time that took about 4 months to get the stay request approved. All of this starts at the DC Circuit of Appeals. Unlikely the DC Circuit will approve it, and then we'll go to the Supreme Court, which we're pretty optimistic about. For the actual rule to get heard and go through all the levels of the court system, it took 7 years the last time. So it would not surprise me, again, if it takes 5 to 7 years, like Matt said, but the important thing we're fighting for right now is the stay request. It puts a pause on everything, and we can go about our business as is.
Another one over here.
Grid to hacking by a foreign power, and has that ever happened?
How vulnerable is a grid to hacking by a foreign power? Well, probably like anything else. I wouldn't want to be naive and say, it's not. It is something that we take very seriously as far as whether it's equipment, whether it's employee training, and then Buckeye Power. I know they do the same thing at even a higher level that we do. I'm not aware of any. I know there have been some electric cooperatives that have been hacked with some of their internal office systems. But I'm not aware of any that have actually had their power affected by it. I don't know if, Kevin, if you've. So.
As a political action group, why don't you help these people become politically active? Give us the information. Let us make our own minds up.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we do. We try to do that.
I don't need it, but I talk to friends. They're clueless about what's going on.
Yeah.
So help us out.
Yeah. It's hard to get through the clutter. I
understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. And that's why we do things like this. Our social media, we do it in there. We put it in we have an email newsletter, the magazine. So we try to do it everywhere we can. And then our not politically, but the policy. Yeah.
Tell us what their policies. Let us make our own mind. Tell us what their policies are.
Yeah.
People that don't know.
Yeah. We'll take that advice back to the magazine. A lot of it's done through Buckeye Power, and we do our local pages. So that's good input for us to hear. Another question up there.
Yeah, I wanted to know how reliable is the grid when it comes to an EMP or a solar flare, and then what's our capability of cold starting that grid if that were to happen?
You got anything on that?
Sure. So that's something, again, PJM's responsible for monitoring. In addition to these load shed notices, the utilities that are a part of PJM get notices of possible solar flares. The grid's pretty resilient. There are hundreds of thousands of miles of transmission. There's thousands of power plants. I think we're pretty good in that situation. I can't remember what was your second part?
Just like the cold start, like if the grid were to
yeah.
black out.
Yeah, great question. So there are designated resources within each area of PJM, and those resources they're called black start resources, and they are designed to come online with no electricity to help them start. So those resources will have large backup generators that can start the turbines, typically at gas plants, and they have to be able to start on the primary or secondary fuel. So in most cases, they'll have, 1 million plus gallons of fuel oil as backup to be able to run. You'll get these smaller units going, and then you have to bring some load on it. Everything has to stay in balance. But a lot of things are dedicated to, one, be able to shut down nuke plants safely, and then get them back online as quickly as possible. So there's dozens of resources throughout PJM designated to do that.
Political side of this, I know you want to stay neutral, but every power, and it's not just you, all of them, should endorse the people that help you.
Right, yep. I understand. Yeah, I don't know if I can speak to that too much as far as our political action program goes, because there's a lot of issues that we have to deal with. We felt our national association sort of sets the stage for our political action, and then our statewide organization also sets that. So we do try to refrain from some of those just flat out blatant endorsements. We try to focus more on the policy. And I think for most people it's pretty clear which individual politicians are for which policy. So that's just where we choose to take our political strategy. Any new
Online or going to be online?
No.
Can you repeat what he?
Yeah, so the question was, is there any new nuclear plants coming online or in the near future? So I take that back. 2 units came online within the last year. Those were started 20 years ago. And I want to say estimated cost range was somewhere around $10 billion for those 2 units, and ultimately cost $30 billion to bring 2 nuclear plants online. Now, those resources are down in southeast part of the country, will likely be around 80 to 100 years and provide a lot of good energy. And so there's a lot of research going into, it's called small modular reactors. But again, it has to go through all the regulatory red tape, and the cost overruns, even at this initial research stage, are multiplying very quickly, that the people that have started those projects have already pulled out of them. So, excuse me? Yeah, so that's a lot of things can be pointed in that direction. It's a new technology. There's a lot of people scared of nuclear, and that causes a lot of regulation. And unfortunately, if carbon reduction is the goal, that's probably the best answer for it. It provides reliability as well.
About emissions from coal-fired. What about all these natural emissions? Volcanoes, forest fires, methane being released from the oceans, and different places in the Arctic. Has anybody evaluated those? Wouldn't that be a good argument against
It would, yeah.
just coal-fired emissions?
Yeah, that would make too much sense. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we ready for door prizes? Uh-oh, you better hurry up.
On a local level, we've had 2 tornadoes recently, and spoke to Matt earlier. Matt's one of the guys who's out there 24 hours. I want to thank Midwest Electric, the linemen, guys who spent the night out, didn't get it half before during the day. And we had a power outage the other night, hopefully those of you who did appreciate it, came back on. I personally saw Matt out after the tornadoes. I know he spent the night out there. So thank you guys.
Well done, too. Okay, who do we have now? Do we have Jim or Adam? Adam. Our attorney, Adam Johnson.
I'll keep my section pretty brief. Good evening. I was assigned the task of giving the election results. So in the 2024 election, we did have some code regulation changes, which did pass, so those amendments will be made. We additionally had the election of directors. So we had 3 open seats. So the following directors received 15 valid signatures and were submitted to the membership for vote, which was held June 3rd. District 2, Allen and Putnam counties, was Ann Selhorst and Stephen Butcher. District 3, Van Wert County, was Roger Rank, unopposed. District 4, Mercer and Darke counties, Gary Kanapke and Tim Birkenstock. This year, the committee retained to collect, count, and certify the results was eSpace Communications, Inc. All ballots and election results are on file at the Cooperative for a period of 1 year. The certified results show Ann Selhorst, Roger Rank, and Gary Kanapke were the successful candidates receiving the highest number of votes for their district seats. These 3 directors will serve a term of 3 years, commencing immediately upon affirming their pledge of office. I invite Ann Selhorst, Roger Rank, and Gary Kanapke to come up and take their pledge of office. If Stephen Butcher and Tim Birkenstock are here, we would like to also thank them for running for office, and Bob Barnt, our outgoing director. There you go. Please raise your right hands. Will you pledge to provide the members with energy and related services of the highest and most dependable quality at the lowest cost, consistent with sound business principles? If so, please answer, I will. Do you pledge to support the policies of the Cooperative and dedicate yourself to understanding and applying the Cooperative principles to the best of your ability? If so, please answer, I will. Will you pledge to follow the laws of the state of Ohio and of the United States in carrying out your duties as director on Midwest Electric Inc.'s behalf? If so, please answer, I will. Lastly, the Cooperative has a history of being a good corporate citizen in its community and, to the extent possible, consistent with Cooperative's core mission to seek improvement in the areas of economic, social, educational, environmental, and community development. Will you pledge to give due consideration to these concerns? If so, please answer, I will. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Now we're at the conclusion of our meeting. I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Back. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. With that, Kevin Schmidt, our co-op CFO, as well as some employees here, will handle the scholarship and door prize drawings. And so they will come up, and our board now will adjourn to our reorganization meeting. Safe travels home, and thank you very much.
Well, thanks for staying for the event. We have prize drawings at the end, which is always nice. First thing we're going to do this year, I think we've done it the other way before. We're going to do the scholarship first. We had a good turnout this year from young students that came in. And remember, if you don't win this year, come back next year. You can always put your name in. If you did get a scholarship from Midwest in the past, you are ineligible. But if you don't get it this year, come back next year, even if you're a sophomore, junior, senior, doesn't matter. And any trade school, any college, any two-year degree, work towards those to your own. So those are all eligible. Go ahead, Keisha. And the winner of this $1,000 scholarship this year is Carly Lucas from New Bremen. Please come up, Carly. On the card, she says she's going to attend University of Dayton and goes to St. Mary's High School. Her parents are Jerry and Jen Lucas. Come on up here. I got to get the money.
Left the money in the car. It's gonna be. Stand by. Here you go, Kevin. Coming up to talk.
Woo! So for $500, we have Mickelson Properties. Are they here? Got to be here. In the red. For $100. We have Joseph Winning. Also for 100, Wilker Eggs and Grain Farm.
Did you find Booker?
Wilker Eggs. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on. Catherine Razavir. Over here. Now we have Linda Schoonover. Also for 100. Mike Berkey. Mike Berkey. John Herman. Over in the yellow. Okay. $100. Kirk Michaud. Kirk, up top. $50 now. Mark Luntz. Also 50. The rest of these are 50. Steve Steinecker. Steve? Next is Brian and Karen Bacon. Are the Bacons here? Now we have Dan Wellman in the red dress or sweater. You have it, Keisha? Okay. Bradley Schott, top center. Ryan Brenneman. Ryan Brenneman. Diane Lee. Diane Lee. Thanks, Julie. Ron Rendler. Ron Rendler. Got him. Carl Koenig. There's Carl on the bottom left there. Right over there, Paul. John Webker. John Webker. Oh, there he is. Gerald Stockler. Over here in the blue or blue-green. Marvin Ross. Marvin Ross. There we are. Linda Fry. Linda Fry. No Linda? We have Leonard Garkey. Up top center, Leonard Garkey. Edward Yall. Top right, Yale. Kenneth Hoffman. Kenneth Hoffman. Over way left. Robert Shear. Top left. Thomas Keller. Thomas Keller. top right. Marvin Tooney. Marvin? Good. Norman Mumma, or Mumma? M-U-M-M-A. To the left. Which way was that? Mumma? Mama? Russell Bowser. Russell Bowser. Straight ahead. Just the first initial, but it's E. Graber. Are we out? Last one. Now, after the money, we have flowers to give away. Is that right, Julie? So if you want it, I'll call your name, and you can either say yes or no and just come get it. And we've got 5 sets down there, 5 flower sets. Last dollars for $50 is Wilson Dorston. Right here. So for the flowers, to come down. Just come down for the flowers, pick one out, they're all about the same. Tarleton Whetstone. Tarleton. Jerome Mullenkamp. Jerome Mullenkamp. Jack Bernig. Jack Bernig. Paul Rutschling. Paul Rutschling. It doesn't. Got one here. Joan Boley. Joan Boley. All right. She's got one. Are we short one? Maybe one more. Michael Kohlreiser. Kohlreiser. Well, thanks for coming. Have a safe drive home. Glad you could come.